I came in watching wrestling about the same time you did, 1983. 84 was when he won the championship, so he was pretty much side by side, and I watched it, and he pretty much was a symbology of the 80s, was he not?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, and just he was the original person that made us hate Iran, like with the Iron Sheik, and like how hard is it for us to think nowadays that Iran's the enemy because we had the Iron Sheik back in the mid 80s telling us how much the USA sucked, you know.
Well, considering the past couple of months, I don't think it's a problem at all.
Oh, and then Nick, you're younger than the rest of us, so you probably only know Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, he's kind of one of the guys that transcended wrestling. You know, not many guys are able to do that. Him, The Rock, and John Cena are the three kind of big ones.
Yeah.
Undertaker, some other guys, but I mean, those three are the, you know, and so that's all I knew Hulk from, because we also just, whenever we had cable as a kid, it was in and out, and I was in the 2000s where a lot of it you had to pay for to get wrestling at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't ever a big wrestling fan just because it wasn't accessible at that point to like the average kid. And so, but I knew, like, was aware of him just because he was everywhere. Even then, when he was 15 years past his peak,
Right.
you know, he was still very famous, obviously.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. Patrick, you're an 80s guy, 80s and 90s guy, so I know.
Yeah, and see, I've had the WWE Network and then on Peacock being able to go and watch stuff from when he first started. But when I started watching, basically probably around 94, 95, right when WCW started, he was one of the first ones that came on there and was kind of like the polarizing person that started that Monday Night Wars with the NWO, the 1996 Bash at the Beach that kind of set it all off. But the thing that I remember the most is, you know, in school, everybody wanted to be a part of the NWO. You know, everybody had the T-shirts, the black and white, the wolf pack, the whole 9 yards. I was right there in it. And even when WCW ended and they brought the NWO to WWF, it was still something that kept everybody's attention, that basically he would attract people to. And he was one of those first people, too, in wrestling that made that successful transition going back and forth from Hollywood to professional wrestling, where he did movies, the Nanny, Thunder in Paradise, and then he had his own reality show with his family and stuff on there, and then did it with his wife. And just over the decades, how much his name is still polarized. Even before he passed away, he's been out of the spotlight and he's made a couple appearances here and there. But being in the businesses with his restaurant and then his T-shirt shop, they just opened one up, had a soft opening in Tennessee, in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
And all, but then they're closed until further notice because they just don't know what's going to happen with his estate and all that money.
Yeah.
But that was just one thing to me that just, on his professional side, he was just able to connect with so many different fans in that aspect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he was the type of person that was, and the word polarizing is a good word, especially for kind of what he had become in these later years. He definitely he was a polarizing figure, and I mean, even with me, he was the first hero I ever had. But these last few years, it's been hard for me to wear my Hulkamania shirt in public sometimes. But I've seen people be really ugly since his death. And that's something I think we should talk about, is that, you know, the guy made mistakes, but all of us make mistakes. And I don't see any reason that people are saying, you know, he should rot and all this kind of stuff. I think that's just ridiculous that we live in a society where somebody dies and all we talk about is the negatives that they did, when the guy did do a lot of positives as well.
Well, controversy aside, JP, let's go back to 1983. Sylvester Stallone hires him to play Thunderlips for Rocky III. That Vince McMahon picks up and says, look, I'm going to crown you my new king. You're our new champion. Boom. He takes it. We know that leads to WrestleMania, Mr. T coming in, the Rock and Wrestling Connection. All of that went on, and it all took off. Why? He had a certain look. You look at the wrestlers back then, the three most popular wrestlers were Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, and Dusty Rhodes. Could Dusty Rhodes and Andre the Giant fill the role that Hulk Hogan did? They
Right.
didn't look it.
Yeah.
They Dusty Rhodes could speak it, but he didn't look it.
Yeah.
Andre the Giant was just Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
So it had to be Hulk Hogan. In retrospect, where else would we go? Ric Flair didn't look the role.
No, and Ric
He's not
Flair was a
scary.
different character too. Like
Well, he's
you
not.
wanted to love to hate Ric Flair most of his career.
You think about it for a minute. Hulk Hogan scared the bad guys.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what he was. It was revolutionary. Okay, so unless you could take Sting or you could take The Rock, both at their peak, and put them back in 1983, who else would have filled that role?
Yeah, that's true too. And like you say, '83 is when you first started watching wrestling. It was the same with me. I can tell you the first match I watched had Andre the Giant in it, and Junkyard Dog, and the Wild Samoans.
That's a great
And-
wrestling right there.
Like as a, like we're talking about 1983, I was only 4 years old. And I remember sitting on the living room floor looking at that going, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I got to keep watching this. And then it was like 3 months later that Hulk Hogan comes out of the blue and beats the Iron Sheik. And it's like, okay, now we're on a roll. And I mean, I was hooked and have been ever since. Like, I mean, y'all know me. I talk about wrestling all the time. But yeah, I think that he definitely transcended things. What you mentioned, reality shows. He also had a reality show called Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling,
Yeah, and that had like Butterbean.
and
from here.
Butterbean was on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually that's the one thing that gave me the opportunity. I actually was able to interview Hulk Hogan over the
sweet.
over the phone for that. Talked to him for like 45 minutes. He was the coolest guy in the world. He was going through a lot then, like a lot of family stuff. And he was really open about it when we talked, and seemed like a really nice guy at the time. That was before all the, chants of racism and things like that came out later. But I mean, he was really going through some tough things and talked about like his spirituality and things like that. And then at the end of the interview, because he was basically Terry the whole interview. It was a very calm, normal person. And at the end, he was like, "Brother, you need anything else before we go?" And I said, yeah, I need something. And he said, "What's that?" I said, "I need you to be Hulk Hogan." And he said, "You want me to Hulk it up, brother?" And I said, "Yeah, I want you to Hulk it up, and I want you to cut a promo. I want you to tell people in Jasper, Alabama, why they should watch Celebrity Championship Wrestling." And I mean, it was like he just flipped a switch.
Really?
And he went from Terry to Hulk freaking Hogan on the phone with me. And he's yelling at me. He said, "What you gonna do, brother?" And I'm like, I've turned into a 5-year-old kid ready to cheer for him again at that point, So it was really cool to be able to talk to him and have that memory now. So that was a lot of
I
fun.
will say, it seems like a lot of wrestlers, especially maybe more so now, when they're trying to become, get out of wrestling, it's kind of more like a stepping stone for a lot of them. It seems like now to getting in movies and Hollywood and other things.
Right.
And they get into Hollywood and they kind of try to distance themselves from that persona.
Right.
Whereas it seems like he just enjoyed it. He just kept it going.
Oh,
forever.
yeah,
When
and
he
I
didn't
mean-
have to. He could have stopped at any point and still been just fine.
But it's almost hard to watch a Hulk Hogan movie because you're watching Hulk. Like, he's still Hulk Hogan no matter what movie he's
Oh,
in.
yeah.
Right.
John Cena, you can kind of like separate.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, he's a character now.
Right.
But with Hulk Hogan, it was like, that's still Hulk Hogan that's on there,
And that's kind of like the same thing you could put with The Rock.
Yeah.
A lot of people that grew up in wrestling, when they see him on the screen, no matter what role he's in, they're like, oh, that's The Rock.
Yeah.
But if you go and ask like my kids and stuff, they're gonna be like, oh, that's Dwayne Johnson. I'm like, no, that's The Rock.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true too. But at least, I mean, I can watch a Rock movie and think, okay, that's the character that he's playing. I could never do that with Hulk Hogan. I could never say, like, he was in a movie called Santa with Muscles. That's Hulk Hogan
Oh, boy.
playing Santa Claus. Like, like that's all it was.
That was a total turkey.
Yeah, that was a rough one. And then I will touch on the racism stuff just a little bit. That I talked to several wrestlers. One guy, I'm sure Nick may not know him, but Kamala is the Ugandan giant. But he was actually African American guy from Mississippi. And I did an interview with him one time, and this was after Hulk's rant and stuff. And he told me, he said, I never experienced anything like that from him. I made more money than I'd ever made in my life, being on a program with Hulk Hogan. He was always super nice to me, always looked out for me, helped me get jobs and things like that. And then I've read others like Teddy Long and Mark Henry and Devon Dudley. A lot of those guys have came out in the last few days and said, man, I never experienced anything, different from him. That he was always kind and, so I think there's more to that story and there's more levels than what gets out there with media sometimes.
Well, you've got to separate the artist from their craft sometimes.
And that's true too. Yeah.
It's you could go through. Look, Bill Cosby, Walt Disney. Look at what they brought.
Yeah.
You know what's behind Bill Cosby, but think of the Cosby Show. What
Right.
did it do? Well, what did Walt Disney do? Sometimes you got to separate the art from the craft. Does it make what they're doing? No, it does not make what they're doing any less. But you look at what they brought in as far as their craft goes, and they were revolutionary.
Right. Yeah, that's true too.
I think it's probably a lot easier for guys that look like us to be like, oh yeah, well, there's more to him when it wasn't really targeted toward us either.
Oh
So,
yeah, and that's definitely true.
And so that's also makes this a very tricky situation because people are very complex.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that we know in real life and love have done horrible things.
Yeah.
And so you do have to look at the whole picture, but also he may not have been the best guy, but
Right, and that's
but he
and
did
nobody's
good,
saying he was a saint
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, sure.
And I've tore him down. Like I said, I wouldn't wear his t-shirts. Like
Yeah, right.
I'm not walking around with a Hulkamania shirt when
Yeah.
you're out there saying these things.
I think to me and this is somebody that was not necessarily a fan, so I guess I have a more outside perspective of it. But I think to me the saddest part about Hulk Hogan is he was somebody that was his whole persona was very unifying. Like you said, the good guy, eat your vitamins, do all your things.
Right.
And whenever it's always sad to see whenever one of those guys then becomes very very controversial, very one-sided, and like picks a side.
Oh
And
yeah,
very
definitely.
becomes
yeah.
a divisive figure.
Yes.
That's to me is more heartbreaking than anything.
Oh, it definitely is. And it takes away that superhero.
Yeah.
Like you, as a 5 to 10-year-old, that he was a superhero in real life, for me. But then the older you get and you're like, and really honestly, I told a friend of mine over the weekend, I was like, all of us have flaws and Hulk had a lot of flaws. I think racism was way further down the list. I think Hulk was a really greedy person.